MaximumFun.org.
She's been on the show before, and somebody that I really genuinely admire, and I'm so proud and glad we could have here at Max FunCon. So please welcome to the stage Tavi Gevinson. Thanks, Sal.
That was so nice. Thank you.
Yeah, you're great.
Thanks.
That's why we invited you. So Tavi, I guess my first question is, when you were a teen, and you're no longer a teen, you're what, 20 or 21 now?
21.
21 years old. So let's all get hammered with Tavi tonight. You're no longer a teen, but when you were a teen and you started writing, were you happy with the media that you had the chance to consume that was targeted towards you, like the non-adult media?
No, I mean, I felt like there were publications for adult, like websites or magazines, or when I was more interested in fashion magazines that I liked, but they weren't like for me. Like I was kind of peering in on someone else's world. And I was like curmudgeonly. So I was fine with being like too cool for 17 or whatever I felt was doing, like was so clearly made by people who were not, going through the stuff that me and my friends were going through, or who were primarily concerned with making profit. So yeah, I was definitely not. I had found issues of Sassy magazine from like the late 80s and early 90s. And that was like my big, I was like, this is not even about bands or elections or anything happening right now. Like there was a lot about the other Clinton, but I was like, oh. But
you're like, this H. Ross Perot sounds cute.
Yeah, or like, God, who else would, I had like this Dear Boy column where they would have girls write in, and but then with like advice they wanted about a guy, but then someone like Thurston Moore, Iggy Pop would answer it. Again, like pre-Thurston Moore, Kill Your Idols, etc. But I just felt like it spoke to me, even though it was from a, for like a generation that were no longer teenagers, and that it was really about not necessarily like writing about current music or figuring out what the teens are into, but just being honest and not talking down and having other actual teenagers write.
When I was in middle school, we went on a couple of ski trips, and I remember very vividly the like 17 magazines being passed around and like the quizzes and stuff.
Right.
And there's something that those magazines have a finger on. It's not about the like boy band stuff or whatever, like all that stuff aside. There's these feelings things in those that you don't get anywhere else because they just kind of go to town. Like there's like, how Reader's Digest has humor in uniform. Like there's a feature like that, or there was, that was just stories of people embarrassing themselves.
Yeah.
That like, I was like, as a 12, 13-year-old, I was like, I am not allowed to like this because I'm a boy and I'm very tough and very hetero. Which no one was buying. That was a product I was selling to no buyers. But also, like, this is the greatest shit ever. Like, yeah. I think there is something in media made for teens, and especially teenage girls, that gives some permission to just go straight to those big, scary feelings.
Yeah, like melodramatic. And that's the thing. Like, even though I wanted an alternative to them, I also love teen magazine. Like, I love everything you're talking about and the ridiculousness of, like, just high school feeling like your whole world, and like those stories that would just be like, I moved and my chair made a sound and everyone thought I farted. And also back then, like, to talk about that, like, whoever sent that in, although it was probably like an intern at the magazine writing a bunch of them,
Right.
would have had to like, mail it in.
Yeah.
And the effort that would take just to be like, I didn't fart. Like, I still love all of that stuff.
I seriously, like, literally, for those of you who are Jordan Jesse Go listeners, like, when we introduced Moments of Shame, I didn't do that good of a job of framing it and making it into a radio segment. But, like, that was all for 15 years, I've been thinking, I want to do a show that's just people saying the most embarrassing thing that ever happened to them.
Oh, God. I feel like that is also part of why, because we do probably... A good chunk of our audience is like, I'm not your demographic, or like I read Rookie when I was younger and now I've grown up but I still read it, or they're just adults who are like, I still like it's not for me but I read it all the time, or I listen to the podcast, and I think it's because like feelings of shame and embarrassment never go away.
You've been doing Rookie for a number of years now, right? What are we in, like 4?
In September, it'll be 6 years old.
Yeah, so there you go. So you were a teen when you started it. How has your perspective on what it is to be a teen changed as you've become a young adult?
Well, the weird thing is that, I'm not that much, like, older than I was, but your life changes, it does feel huge, the difference between even like 15 and 16. And my life changed really drastically, and I didn't go to college, and I moved to New York, and like most of the people I'm around are older than me. And like, I guess I became a lot more, a lot of things feel like they've changed, even though it also feels like nothing's changed. But the biggest thing, or what I've been thinking about a lot lately, is that when I was younger, I was kind of protected by my own idealism and how much I was like, because it all started when I wrote a blog when I was younger, and people started taking note of that. And I was like really cynical and not trusting of adults. And with Rookie, I was like, I don't care about money. I just want people to have something good. And it's only now that I am more... It is my job, and I'm in the media world, like in real life and not just from my computer, that I realize how anomalous Rookie actually is. Like, I knew it when it started and and other teenagers were responding to it, that it was, it meant a lot to these people. But now, as I become only more jaded and more cynical, do I realize... just how rare it is that people don't just want to make money.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that you're describing in the media world, and it's one that I'm familiar with from, owning a fashion blog myself, is like the online media world is built around, in 2017, is built around this one social media interaction.
Yeah.
Like, it's built around generating a moment of intense emotion. An intense emotion that can be generated through something as simple as a headline and a log line that shows up on somebody's Facebook page, which is driving a lot of, like even NPR, it's like 60% of their engagement or 70% of their engagement comes from social media.
Wow.
And that is a very different interaction than the kind of interaction that I feel like you are trying to drive for Rookie, which is much more about a relationship between the publication and the reader, and the readers and each other to some extent.
Yeah, the things that really made me excited about life and the world when I was younger and kind of had my secret life online, which then became like not really secret, but I read, there were people I was like obsessed with, and I read their blogs every day, and it didn't matter what it was about. I just cared about them and their voice or their personal style. And I think, and with Rookie, I'm really glad that we're able to like try to actually nurture writers and not just ask them to write kind of like clickbaity or just more frivolous things just because the publication needs the kind of engagement you're talking about. Like it's really obviously everyone right now is worried about journalism and media and art and literature, and just try to, like, whenever I feel kind of nihilistic or I feel overwhelmed, I really just try to go back to like a one-on-one interaction with a writer and what it's like to learn more about them or help them or read all of their stuff. And it just feels like a more personal way of, because, you know, there's like this really ubiquitous voice on the internet that all these headlines are written in now that's like kind of pseudo informal, and it's so manipulative and it makes you feel like you're kind of like people are just chatting and people are just friends, but then it's actually something incredibly inane, like 5 times like God, can't even think.
Like, you're not going to believe what this rat ate.
Yeah. Yeah, basically. But then the rat is like Sean Penn or something. Yeah. Sorry. I don't care about Sean Penn. But yeah.
So how do you decide? I mean, I think at a lot of the most successful new media companies, they are driven by a relatively close connection between simple metrics and the content generation. So like editors are looking at what kind of thing do people want to look at? Writers are looking at, I've been assigned this story, how do I put it in a way that people want to look at it? And people want to look at it here being defined in part as people clicking on it in social media,
right?
Which is where a lot of the audience is coming from. So how do you define success if you are not doing it through that simple of, 100,000 clicks, you get an extra $100?
Right. Yeah, there have been many. So as I've kind of, like at times felt like I've inherited this like passion project from when I was younger. And, you know, like my parents were really supportive and they were, you know, we were not in a position where they were like, okay, like, strike while the iron is hot and try to just like monetize whatever you can. They wanted it to stay, and, you know, we were able to keep it this way, but they wanted it to stay fun for me. And I definitely have very intense moments of like, I wish like I had been more business minded. I wish I had sought out more guidance in that area. I wish I hadn't done, you know, like you said, I do acting and I love doing it a lot. But if you do a play for 6 months, that's your like, and then you come back to the internet and everything's changed. And I really have to be like, you know, it's frustrating. It's not, it's easy to, even in the, whatever, with the like boxes I've been able to check off or whatever, like I often, just because it's so hard to run an independent publication, can feel like a failure. But thankfully, like my definition of success and like the way I was raised and the people who've mentored me and the people I admire, it is more about like the, you know, things fade. It's so funny just how much of, even like with acting, how much of a crapshoot is where you're like, oh, this thing sounds like it'll be really, like on paper, this should be something that's really successful and it's really not, or the opposite. Like everything basically fades and you just have to do the things that you love doing while they're happening. But what doesn't fade is actually if you've made a change in another human being. So when we have our book signings and someone's like, oh, I read that article when I was going through a really hard time and it convinced me to get treatment. or, we've heard that from so many people now, and it's a testament to our writers and our whole community and the other readers and the way they make each other feel. And not to like self-martyr because there are other things I pursue that are way more just about vanity and money. But because I have to, because I've like totally independent. But that is like how we define it. And also like the, influencing people who maybe not being something that like every single teenager reads, because I don't know if that thing even exists now. That would just be like Snapchat. But but being something where like, someone comes up, a new songwriter or writer or actor or artist or someone I admire, and then they say like, oh, I've been reading Rookie since I was a kid, basically. So
can you give me an example of that?
Lord, Amandla Stenberg, Rowan Blanchard, these like young artists who are also activists and who also really care about things and somehow, and have these giant followings because they're in a franchise or they're on this Disney show, but they are like the opposite of, whatever that would have meant like even 5 years ago. And they're getting all these really young, impressionable people who follow them to care about the world. And then they'll be like, oh, Rookie is how I found out what feminism was. And I'm like, oh, it's all like, you just kind of have to, I'm just like, just keep doing what you like and what you think is good. And like, it all kind of comes out in the wash.
One of the things that I struggle to understand about your career and your path is that having come out of fashion world, like that you became a public figure and famous person to a group of people in the world of fashion, which is a world that like, and I say this as somebody that like really cares about it and works in it in a way, like has like a higher snake to decent person ratio than like almost anything else. Just like so many venal monsters, you know what I mean? So like, and you were like, you weren't just dealing with having to interact with those people on kind of like a casual basis. You were like the target of a lot of it. Like,
yeah,
there was a lot of like meanness about you being a teenager and all this different shit for every bit of like support and launching that you got for being talented and interesting. So who were the people that you found in that when you were a teenager, besides your folks who really, supported and guided you through this, and you're kind of lucky to have parents who were like teachers and got it.
Yeah.
To some extent. But like, who were the people that you met who had values that were more than just, let's trick people into thinking they need this,
yeah.
which is like 70% of fashion.
Yeah. Or let's trick people into thinking they'll live forever, or like, yeah. I know. It's, it's kind of a gift to like to gather enough evidence early on that like no one knows what they're talking about, nothing matters. Even like, and that probably goes for a lot of industries. Like my friend reads a lot of like, 80s Hollywood producer memoirs about like taking meetings and doing a lot of coke. And like, I forget whose it was, but he was like, one of them, he just keeps being like, remember, no one knows anything about anything. Like, that's like the catchphrase. And so that's like, it can make you cynical, but then also is a gift because you're like, I can just do whatever I want. And I don't need to be liked by thousands of people I'll never meet in real life. I just want like 3 to 5 friends I actually like being in a room with, And then if anyone else is into this, cool. So, I mean, my parents are amazing, and like fashion was not their world. My dad taught English at my high school, and my mom is a textile artist who weaves tapestries about Judaism and Leonard Cohen. And
I mean, to be fair, that could be argued as a sort of mom version of Rookie.
it is.
Like making a tapestry about Leonard Cohen is like
Right.
the 60-year-old's version of
Like fandom, extreme fandom.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my dad, like, we years into Rookie even being a thing, he was like, "Oh, did I ever tell you that I started a journal writing class at your high school in the 80s? Yeah, I had a book proposal. I took their journals. I made a book proposal called Being 17. It was like the diaries of real teens. And back then there was no internet, so you really didn't know what teenagers were going through or thinking." And he showed me the proposal, and of course it didn't, it wasn't published. But I was like, oh, I'm you. Genetics and nurture, nature. I get it.
He's a nice dude. He came the first time you were on the show. He came. He was real nice. So
He says hi, by the way.
Oh,
But
great.
I told him I was here.
Awesome.
He was like, Jesse Thorn, say hello.
I'm pretty sure he got in the rocket ship. Didn't he get in the rocket ship?
He did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like with it turned on too. Like
Yeah. Still have that video somewhere. But yeah, like, so those are my parents. And then, but I also, and obviously they were kind of like, we should make sure, like, if all this is happening, or if people are trying to like suckle the youth out of you, we should at least make sure like you save some money and you can go to college if that's what comes out of all of this, great. But they were never pressuring me into doing something that made me feel uncomfortable. I guess, and then in fashion, I mean, there were the girls who do Rodarte, Kate and Laura Malavi, they became designers because I think one of them was an art history major, one of them was an English major, and then they both were just like watching horror movies for months and living with their parents. And then I think they were like, we should just be fashion designers. And they sold a crazy record collection to buy a Chanel dress and then cut it up so they could see how it was made. And then like they sent their first lookbook to magazine. Instead of like doing a photo shoot and sending this little book, they made like paper dolls and made little versions of their clothes. And they were just like, and they live in Pasadena, and they emailed me when I was 13, and they were like, we love your blog or whatever. And so I met them, and I still see them to this day. But they are people who were like, you and all of their friends who they have always worked with and the people they keep around them, it's like you enter that world, and it was very clear, like, focus on what you like doing, and like people do suck, and like it's all political, but that's not, you can't be consumed by that. And I also like, the first like snarky thing that was written about me, a woman emailed me named Laia Garcia and was like, oh, don't listen to them, like it's all bullshit, whatever, and like keep doing you. And we stayed friends for years, and now she's my best friend and at home, and like
I think we're all disappointed that you didn't just call out the person that wrote you the shitty thing.
Oh, I don't mind. Yeah. No, it was
It just seemed like you were, and then it turned out you were calling out the person who was nice to you. Became your friend. We demand conflict narratives.
Yeah, I did not become friends with that person. I mean, it is super weird to be like 13 and be like, and someone like, and people think of you as like a polarizing figure. But they're like, also like not people, like they're not people I was ever gonna meet. And if I did, which sometimes happened, it's like they're awkward or they're going through a lot in their head, and I like don't even know, and I'm going about my life.
It seems like one of the threads that you were talking about in terms of this adolescence that you spent in the fashion industry is that in a way, because the fashion industry is so weird and venal and is so much about kind of spur of the moment self-justifications, that the fact that you met and interacted with the people who were making art in that context, or at the bare minimum making craft. Okay, I'm going to rephrase that so I'm not placing art below craft, but like, or alternately doing craft, like genuinely brilliant craft. You know, like I have a friend who makes shoes, and it's the most amazing thing in the world.
Yeah.
You know, like to be able to do that is the most astonishing skill that I can't even imagine. I have no skills. So to meet people like that in a way, like the lesson that it seems like you took from that in part was, well, it's okay that the world is bullshit and there's no rules, because in a way that opens a lane to do something that has meaning because there's no rule against that.
Yeah. I mean, and also that like you can do a lot of it just for yourself too. I mean, I didn't really think twice about the fact that I created a blog that was like public, and I also had a diary, but you know, I'm a performer. I have that in me. I want an audience. But like one thing that happened was after that mean piece of press, I'll just say it. I mean, who cares? But it was like my dad gave me a short story. I forget who wrote it, but it's called Claudine's Book, and it's about a girl who's 12. And her stepmom or her aunt finds her diary, and it's like very, you know, insightful for her age, and gets it published. And then there's all this press, and they're like, she's not really doing it herself, which is what people were saying about me. And the aunt and all these reporters come to her home, and the aunt takes credit for it, and Claudine just lets her do that because she's like, I don't know, so unaffected by it, or just kind of misses the privacy she had, and it ends with her whistling a victory march and going back up to her treehouse. And I think that was my dad's way of being like, you can walk away at any time, and you can do things just for you.
Did your dad, the high school English teacher, answer all emotional questions in the form of a short story? Like family meeting, we've got some big shit going on, and we're going to need a new reading list.
Oh, that's a really good point.
What's it like now for you as a grown adult who like does actual things in the world, to have so much of who you are when you interact with somebody who doesn't know you personally already defined by stuff that you did when you were 13?
I think if I'm already feeling a little insecure or socially anxious or something, that's something that comes up, especially if I'm around people, like at a fashion thing where someone would have prior knowledge. But most of the time I wouldn't really assume that they do. And I just can't, you can't try to know what you don't know or try to be psychic, even though I've tried. So I think I've found a way to just stop trying to read people's minds and just like talk to them. Yeah.
We had an interview in class just now, and I played this clip from this conversation that I had with Elizabeth Gilbert, who's for folks who don't know, is a best-selling writer. She wrote Eat, Pray, Love is her best-known book. She recently wrote a book called Big Magic, and she's hosts Magic Lessons, a Max Fun podcast. And I asked her about, like, you know, Eat, Pray, Love was such a gargantuan phenomenon that her entire world was defined by people who hadn't even read Eat, Pray, Love having expectations of who she was.
Right.
And I framed it as a certain kind of white lady, and then she defined it more specifically based on her lived experience of what people thought of her. And the thing that she said that I was so stunned by was, she was like, I realized the only person who like really has an understanding of the totality of my experience is me. And it's unreasonable for me to expect others to have that understanding of the totality of my experience. There's no way for them to have that understanding of the totality of their experience. And like essentially when they make presumptions about me, it's I can't responsibly take it as an attack upon me when it grows out of the fact that they necessarily know less about me than I do. Mm-hmm. And there's not much that I can do to quote unquote defend myself other than to offer some other, I can offer some other vision of who I am or what I have to offer to the world. But even as a defense, it's an ineffective defense. You can only do it as an offering, essentially.
Right.
And I was like, I remember her saying that to me. And, when she says shit, she means it. Mm. And no matter what she could read you a Chinese restaurant menu and you'd just be like, yeah, mushu pork. But that was that was a really powerful idea for me, that like, oh, right, they don't know who I am. They have this tiny piece of who I am, the tiniest piece of who I am. And when they talk about who I am, they're talking about themselves because they have a really big version of what they are. And so I can't control who they are, and all I can do is offer something else.
Yeah, I mean, my therapist says, but she's like, the only people who are gonna know you are the people who are in a room with you year after year, and like other than that, people have opinions, positive or negative, just based on like whatever information is out there. But it's like there are little avatars of me, but that's totally different from like actually being that person. And I also think that, I was talking about this with Jeff Tweedy. Let me pick up that. But like, that like helps the story if you know that he said it, because he was talking about.
Are you 100% sure you don't want to save that name dropping for Talk Show the Game Show tonight?
Oh, yeah.
Because I believe that's a 5-point thing to
Really?
drop a name. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great.
If you can work in a plug for your current project, you could double that to 10.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah, I'll spend all afternoon thinking about that. But yeah, no. But I was talking about it with him because we're both from Chicago, and I was friends with his son growing up, and like, he was like, well, you're not supposed to connect with all humans. Like, there's a ceiling on how many people are gonna like and get what you're making, and then after that ceiling, like, there are gonna be all these people who feel like they have to weigh in on what you're doing because they think they keep hearing about you. Of course, they don't have to do anything, but it's not like for them, so they're not gonna get it, and that's fine. But yeah, I also, and to that point, I also think like just the way people take in other people on the internet, it's like such a fantastical, almost narcissistic thing. Like, when have I felt the most strongly about someone I don't know who I'm just looking at on the internet? Maybe when I've been like my most depressed or lonely or insecure or frustrated with my own, if I'm stagnant in some way about something I want to do. And then, of course, like, if that person or project or thing that I already have a lot of opinions about, maybe without even being very familiar with it, comes up in conversation with another person, I like, it puts a floor beneath me. And I'm like, oh, right, like that, whatever I was thinking about, it just has a lot more to do with what's going on in my life right now. I mean, it's the same with criticism. Like, like film criticism or art criticism, where I think it's most useful when people are just trying to work out what kind of art they want to make. Or
in some ways, the ways that art is useful to them or affects their own lives and their own trajectory, which is different for every person.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I like criticism that is really personal and where the person isn't trying to erase some kind of bias that's inevitably there. But I don't know, I have a friend who's is like, it's really cool that you can be a way for young people to figure out what they do and don't like. And he's like, you know, when I was in film school, like me and my friends all would hate on Wes Anderson and have really strong opinions because we were just figuring out what we wanted to make. And now it's like, oh, he's doing his thing. Like, that's not going to be any more like, that is just what's inside his head. I don't know.
I heard that you are a list maker.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of lists do you make?
Where'd you hear that?
I heard it in my interview class. One of my research assistants dug that shit up.
Really? Oh. I'll do a list of like, you know, a type of person I'm trying to learn from at the moment.
That's a weird list. I mean, I support it, but I expected you to say groceries or whatever.
Oh, I mean, yeah, but that's kind of
Things to
obvious,
do.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the last thing was like, are you familiar with Kobe Bryant's Muse Cage? Is anyone? So.
Wait, so what is Kobe Bryant's Muse Cage?
Oh my God. It's. So, the past couple of years, what he's been doing is making a children's show. Children's web series.
Kobe Bryant, the basketball star.
Yes.
Okay.
It
Black
takes,
Mamba.
Yeah, there's a puppet.
Self-proclaimed.
There's a puppet named Mamba.
Uh-huh.
Kind of phallic.
We're talking about Vino. He's called that because he gets better with age. Another nickname he gave himself. Continue.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously not, like, I don't know if I'd ever want to be in a room with that person, but so it takes place in Canvas City. There's like top-notch animation. It's kind of like Mr. Rogers, but it's Kobe Bryant talking about artistic process. And kind of like thinking that because something works for him, it'll work for everyone. But in a way, so he talks about your muse cage, and he's explaining it to Mamba, and he's like, yeah, the muse cage is where you keep all of the thoughts and your muses. Like there are happy musings, like I'm the best, I'm gonna win, and then there are dark musings, and it's like you're a failure. Like it gets really dark for a moment. But he's like, but then you take those musings and you turn them into fuel, and then there's like an animation of a train, like chugging along and turning musings.
Dope metaphor, Kobe.
Yeah. Anyways, you should just watch it, and you should also read his op-ed about his muse cage and how Allen Iverson is in it, and how he's like I went to the coasts and watched how sharks prey on one another. It's also that like celebrity op-ed thing where every sentence is its own paragraph. It's so okay. I was like, oh, this is a good way of channeling my rage. And so I like for a while I had a list of people like that, and like another one was like not like my Allen Iversons, but people like Kobe, where you're just like stunned by the confidence. And one like, have you seen the Eagles documentary?
No, but I've heard it's really amazing. I watched the documentary now parody of it.
Yeah.
And felt like I was really missing something.
Oh man, it's so good. But in the Eagles one, Bill Hader's character in that, so he's like the asshole.
Yeah.
In the real one, both of them are Bill Hader.
Right.
And you're like, how did you ever work together? Because they're both just such alphas. But after I saw it, I was like, wow, you just have to have the entitlement, confidence, I don't know, just stunning entitlement of like Don Henley.
Or any other white man.
Yes.
In America.
That's right. Yeah.
I know what I'll do. I'll make my living with a public radio show I make in my house.
I mean,
people will care about my interviews with obscure comedians.
But like they do.
Yeah.
I do. Or the confidence of like a I mean, when I started my blog, I was like definitely you know how people talk about how girls like reach a point where they become, when you actually hit adolescence, you become really insecure. I basically was like a late bloomer, so when I started all of that, I was still a kid. And I think that's part of like why I was able to do any of it.
Right. You kind of blundered into that world with the confidence of a child, that you didn't have any expectation that there were limitations on what you could do. And only that sort of momentum carried you through that adolescent downturn of, oh, everyone hates me and everything I'm doing, and if I try and do anything, it's going to be a failure and I'm not going to get invited to the dance.
Right. Yeah, no, instead I got that once I was already a public figure or whatever. But yeah.
But
so
now
like,
you're
that's a list I had.
Now you're a real Black Mamba, right?
I try to be, yeah. Just the stare.
I'm a total Vino. Getting better with age. I hope Nick Weiger isn't here for us talking shit about his personal hero, Kobe Bryant.
Oh.
His personal god.
It's not shit. Everyone should watch this weird video.
Well, I mean, one of the things that you learn from somebody like Kobe Bryant or somebody like Don Henley or whatever is that to some extent those extraordinarily successful people are extraordinarily successful because they're insane.
Yeah.
And that's not a life you want.
Right.
Like, I genuinely think that like a big problem with America is that we teach people that they can be anything.
Yeah.
When in fact we should be teaching people to like have children and like them. You know? Or other fulfilling things, enjoy reading or something. Like things that are accessible to everyone, because only insane people have the combination of foolishness and obsession that leads to Kobe Bryant's success. Like you can be a functional person and have like I don't know, like Audie Cornish, host of Morning Edition level success. Like she's very driven, but like she's like she can live in an but to be to be Dan Rather, you may have to be an insane person. You know what I mean? Like or at least a miserable person. Or you're just one of those people that like is just like gets a boat and is like, yeah, fuck you, I've got a boat, and just loves it.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, my friend just interviewed him and said that he was like, I just heard this quote. I don't remember who said it, but it was something like, be thankful for tomorrow and look forward to the future, but the present is a gift. And I was like, oh my God. Like, there are no rules. But, yeah. Yeah, I know. I'm interested in that. I think there are a lot of factors, but I also that's also why I feel confused by how much people at a certain level, like then they just have to, in order to be sympathetic, they have to be like relatable. And so then that's the whole thing of like, I wonder if there are talk show, game show points for like talking about how much you love cheeseburgers. but like you see someone like that it's like you'll be unlikable especially if you're a woman, or if you're like super famous and you don't act like, oh shucks, but then you're like, wait, this is fucked up. Why am I like you're not me. You have so much more money than me. Like makes a huge difference in life and in the way the world works. And I mean, not that that's like the only thing that is going on, but that's, yeah, I don't know. I am very interested in like how important someone's personality becomes at that level when it's like all of it is performance. You're never gonna know that person.
Sometimes I think about how much I like how part of Martha Stewart's deal is she's like, yeah, fuck you, I got horses.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good at this shit.
She also made like a diss recipe about Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I tell you this, there's this Rich Gang song called Javinci, and on the intro, Baby, who's maybe the most, I don't want you guys to think I'm endorsing Baby as a human being, because I believe he may be the genuine personification of the devil on earth. And the most vacant-eyed monster in the world. But there's this part where he goes, yeah, you know how we do. Marble floors, gold toilets and shit. And I'm like, yeah, that's not relatable. I'm into that.
Right.
Fucking, this dude got rich and he's like, yeah, I'm getting a gold toilet.
Yeah.
Anyway, I like that better than Donald Trump eating KFC, I guess I'm saying.
Right. Yeah.
Though Donald Trump may also have a gold toilet.
For sure.
Okay, let's get down to brass tacks because we're almost out of time. I guess one of the questions that I have is the biggest questions I have is you've had these 3 incredible careers as a 21-year-old, right? You've had a remarkable acting career. You've had a remarkable publishing career as a as the publisher of a magazine, and you had this bizarre and amazing career in fashion as a fashion writer and person that goes to fashion shows or whatever it is to have a career in fashion. I still don't understand. But anyway, these 3 crazy things, but you're also 21 years old. Like, do you think that you will be happy or comfortable if you're 40 and you're like a greengrocer or something, like something super regular, or even just like if you just like are like a person that works at a magazine, if magazines still exist, I guess a space magazine or like, do you think that given all this crazy shit that you've done by 21, that like if you have a normal life, you could manage that in emotionally?
It's the kind of thing that I would not I don't think it's actually useful in any way for me to think about that.
Uh-huh.
Like it's the only thing that would come up in this setting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so like one foot in front of the other, one day at a time. I know that I find myself, craving something that feels a little more like how it felt to come home from school. I'm like, oh, maybe I want to if I have to choose one job right now, it's something where like I come home at the end of the day and I feel like I have a home life and it's not like, my work is not being social or anything like that. I mean, it's...
You're 15 years ahead of me on that one. I just figured that shit out. My 3rd child, I'm like, maybe I should be emotionally present at home.
I mean, I think it's like easier said than done. Like I'm also a rat. Like I'm a performer and I like shiny things, and I think part of it is also like, when I was younger, I was so worried about there's so many narratives about people who become successful young, and also interviewers would be like, do you worry that you're gonna kill yourself? Like that happens to a lot of prodigies. And I was just like, ugh, you think you're... I mean, So, when I was younger, probably one of the lists of people I admired was like Henry Darger and J.D. Salinger and like recluses who did it just for themselves. And, more recently, I'm like, you have ambition. There are people who... And that's not like bad. And like I just interviewed George Saunders for our podcast, and he was like burn through every desire you have so you can find out what's on the other end, if it really makes you happy, if it's what you really want. And in like the work that I do, things that can be more frivolous or just vain or whatever, make it possible to do the things I really care about that make no money. So I don't even remember what you asked me, but I guess
It's about whether you'd be cool with being a greengrocer, if that's how it works out.
I mean, what am I doing in my free time? Am I writing in my free time? Maybe it'd be nice. Yeah, I guess I don't know. Like, for better, for worse, I've always been an ambitious person. I think that it's I don't know. I need more details. Like, where am I living?
What's in season?
Yeah. Like, is it...
Can I be a television greengrocer?
Right.
Basically, that's my dream career. To go on the guy that goes on local news and says, what's in season? Like,
Yeah.
I'd give it all up right now. She'd be like, Cherimoyas.
Right. But,
Known as the custard apple. Tavi, I guess my real question based on your answer is, should both of us just dedicate our lives to asking George Saunders stuff?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that is amazing.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
he's so wise.
So wise. Oh, that was another list I had. Famous Buddhists.
Yeah.
George Saunders, RuPaul, Philip Glass.
Tina Turner.
Really?
Yep.
Gary Shandling.
Yep. This is a dope list.
I know. You're like, I think they know something, but I'm never going to meditate in my life. So
Then
no,
again,
thank you.
if we came up with a list of famous Episcopalians, that shit would be pretty dope too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Episcopalians
Like who?
would really pick and choose. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's like less public, you know.
Yeah. No, good stuff. Good stuff.
Well, Tavi, on that important note, folks are hungry. They got to eat lunch. Thank you so much for taking all this time to talk
Thank
with us.
you.
Tavi Gevinson,
Thanks.
ladies and gentlemen.